So, Sage and Ulysses will be giving their review of Dead Space 2. Take it away, guys.
Man, I tell you, I really look back at Dead Space 2 almost as kind of one of the defining games of that generation. Like it is kind of the Resident Evil 4, what that was to like the PS2 GameCube era. I feel like this is kind of that horror game for the PS3 360 era. I don't know if that's a popular opinion, but it made a similar sort of alien to alien style jump from 1 to 2 that I think Resident Evil 4 also was kind of that very similar sort of expansion of action within the franchise. And this, I think, it doesn't even go as far as that, as in terms of as a departure from 1 to 2, but it just refines and tightens everything. And the first game had a few issues too. Like it wasn't perfect, but it had a great start. This game, it's like it took everything that first one set up and it just ran with it.
Yeah, I'd agree with everything Sage said. I mean, this game, it was like the first game, the original, it was a little janky to play at times. Great game, but a little janky. This game never felt like that. Everything sort of clicked into place perfectly. Every gameplay element, every gameplay loop, the way the weapons worked, the way the enemies worked, it all felt like they had nailed it down to a science. And so it's an interesting game because it goes by a lot faster than you would think it would when you're playing it, but you enjoy every moment of it. And like Sage said, this is less of a horror game and more of an action game with horror elements, because you can kind of become quite the powerhouse over the course of the game, as crazy as some of the enemies are. I remember it getting fairly easy once you start to get your arsenal unlocked, and that kind of helped keep the pace of the game going. It kept moving you through the story very quickly.
Yeah, the pace, I mean, it is breakneck. Like the first one, especially the opening sequence, right, it's very slow. And it's great for that game, but it is slow, and it takes a little bit of time to kind of build up, and then the first game, one of its issues was just it really only had the one really good weapon to it, and everything else is kind of eh. So even in the lead up to unlocking more weapons and stuff, but even after that, it's like, especially because you really want to stick to the one. I feel like the first game, you never feel like too well equipped. But in this one, they redesigned some weapons, and there's a whole bunch of new ones in here, like the javelin and the detonator, which I think are both really cool. But this game like just rounded out your ability to fight back in a way that it made you feel powerful, like Ulysses said, but it also is like that perfect sort of I don't want to say full on puzzle necessarily, but there is a rhythm to the combat where you start to figure out like what weapons are best on certain enemy types, and you can kind of exploit these advantages you have over them depending on what environment you're in, and just the way the room is arranged. There's like the detonator is one of the new weapons that got added from the first one to the second one, and it's like a trip mine, basically explosive. So you can shoot it on the walls, and there's these I forget what the name for them specifically is, but they have these like bullhorn head things, and they hide, and then they come out from behind cover and charge at you. And if you use your environment right, you can set up all this detonator stuff everywhere, and I mean, you're basically Jigsaw at a certain point.
Yeah, those guys in particular, they're sort of introduced a bit early on, so you can kind of get a feel for what it's like having to fight them when you're under-equipped. And those are probably some of the harder enemies in the game. But once you have the detonator, it's like the tables are completely flipped on them, which is an amusing feeling to have in this sort of horror game. And the setting of the game, it's this huge space station, is a really sort of wonderful change of pace from the Ishimura in the first game. And it offers you a lot of very sort of unique glimpses into like the world that Dead Space is. Like you go through like a school, you go through like like a food processing area at one point, I believe,
It's like
and
a straight up
uh,
shopping mall too.
yeah, because you are in what is essentially this space city, and so you have this sort of post-apocalyptic vibe going on of once all hell breaks loose in the city, which it does right away. That's not a spoiler, and it's very different from the sort of cold, clinical, like mining vessel horror that you had in the first game.
And I'll say too, that's one of the things that this is an improvement on over the first one. In that, I love. I think the USG Ishimura, great, setting. Right? I think it's one of the most iconic video game settings there are. But in the original, and I think the remake kind of fixed this, but in the original, I do think in the last third of the game, some of the environments start to feel just a little repetitive. Like it's a little like, okay, this everything looks familiar for like a good stretch near the end. And this just did. I mean, I feel like you're moving between all those areas that he just listed. You're moving between them so quickly. None of them ever have a chance to wear out their welcome. And there was actually a zoo level that they got cut mid development that never made it into the game. But I can only imagine how awesome that would have been and what they would have done with that.
Here's hoping it ends up in when this game gets its inevitable remake.
I hope that happens. Actually, I hope it does eventually. And it's funny though. That also just speaks to how well this game has aged. Like there are things I think you could add in a remake. Like you could do that zoo thing. You could change the face model to match the remake of the first game a little bit better since they started using like the actual voice actor's face. But the game just it's amazing how well it holds up. Like this game came out in 2011. I want to say like February 2011, and it looks like honestly it kind of looks like it could have been like a mid-generation PS4 game with how well its graphics have held up. Like I'd say almost a whole generation later than it came out, it's kind of stands neck and neck with a lot of those games. I'd say the jankiest looking thing is like the actual human face animations, but so much of the game is spent with like the helmets on or NPCs that are decently far away, or they're on this like holographic screen talking to you, and so there's this like extra filter that covers up like maybe some of the flaws in the character model, so that makes them look better than they are too. Like just but then the environments and the creatures and the weapons and the lighting system is like surprisingly excellent. Like, and for a time in video games when I feel like we were going through a lot of like, a lot of Call of Duty, a lot of military shooters. It's a lot of kind of brown and gray environments, not a ton of like vibrant colors. This game manages to actually have a lot of vibrant like lighting to it. Like when you're going through the Unitology Church, which is actually where this little moment is taking place in the video. Every room you walk into, there's this blue glow coming down in certain rooms. It's like this like futuristic cyberpunk stained glass, and then there's others that have this like kind of almost little mini rays of sunshine ironically coming out into the hallway. There's just a lot of really cool things in the environment, and it tells a lot about the whole culture of everything through that, and it manages to make Dead Space feel like a universe that you could invest in and not just like one cool horror setting.
I'd say the one thing that makes you go, "Oh yeah, this is an Xbox 360 game," or not Xbox, but 360 era
Yeah,
game, is all the quick time events that you do in some of the cutscenes and whatnot, because that was sort of the style
yeah,
at the time.
that
But
definitely does.
other than that, it feels like a game that is somewhat timeless in a sense, and
Um,
as a consequence, it still holds up really well now.
yeah. Have you guys said what the story is yet? So what's going on in the sequel there as what's advanced from the first one?
So the first game ends with Isaac shutting the marker down, at least it's seemingly destroying it, and he gets away on an escape pod, and then there's like a jump scare where the dead hallucination of the girlfriend jumps in his face. So this game picks up, and you see him there's a little bit of a recap type thing of stuff from the first game, and there's like a therapist talking to him, and he's in a straitjacket, and he's like hallucinating at the same time, and then it cuts, and it's like several years later, and basically this government sector has been keeping him on ice for years at this city station. So like years and years have passed, and he's just getting put back into cryo like an alien almost. And someone wakes you up, shining a light in your eyes. And the moment, I mean, I always will remember the way this opens because it is so grotesque. Like the first game takes a good chunk of time to really start getting into intense. This game is just like in your face in the first like minute basically of the game. And
yeah, you have this fantastic, like, what is actually a true horror sequence very early in the game where you are powerless to do anything as just all hell breaks loose around you. And you basically just witness the apocalypse going on in this station, like with all the stuff that is going on with these necromorphs and all that. And yeah, you were just kind of thrown from one place to another right off the bat.
And there's like two, I'd say, major organizations here. Like there's very much a corrupt government, and there's also the unitologists. That I mean, it's clear who they're making fun of. But this crazy unitology church that worships these markers that create these creatures. And this game starts bringing up this concept of convergence. I don't think they mentioned it in the first game at all originally. But convergence seems to be some sort of ultimate mutation that they're trying to cause to happen, right? These unitologists like believe that the necrotized flesh of these beings is like some sort of it's immortality on a technicality. Like a lot of the crazy cults and like horror like this are that's basically what they're always doing. But you are slowly trying to kind of uncover like the conspiracy between the church, government, what this convergence thing actually is, trying to survive amidst all that. But also, I think one of the things that really evolves the whole feel of this game is in the first one, you've got the creatures, and you start to get into some of the hallucination stuff near the end of that game. But in this game, you generally, I think, can tell when it's happening, but it is having you hallucinate things from the opening sequence, right? So you are being like haunted by this like ghost apparition in the form of the marker trying to like speak to him and like drive him crazy because that's what it does to people before they turn, right? And the whole game, I think, is this like little bit of a cat and mouse game that you're playing with like the alien signal in a way. Is like just this interesting push and pull. And then, the first game he was a silent protagonist, wasn't like much of a real character. That push and pull in this one actually does give him some layers and start to make Isaac Clarke like he's not just nameless space engineer. He's like there's actually like a personality, which was then one of the things that was great about the remake is they brought that same actor back and kind of added his voice to that.
One of the things that I think also helped a lot with that is that you have a very strong like supporting cast in this game. In the first game, you had sort of your crewmates from the repair ship or whatever it was, and they were kind of important to the plot, but you didn't see them that often, and they were mostly just kind of sacrificing themselves to help you get from point A to point B in the grand scheme of things. In this game, you've got a variety of characters. You've got Tideman, who's sort of the human antagonist of the thing. He's sort of like the dictator of the station you're on. You've got, I believe Ellie was her name was.
Yes, that was good.
Yeah, and
They
she's sort of
ruined in 3.
they did ruin in 3, and she's sort of like the sidekick character in this, except she's there for the whole game. Her and Isaac have a pretty interesting back and forth that ties in really well to Isaac's guilt over what happened with Nicole in the first game and things like that. Shoot, I'm blanking on the
There's
other person I was going to mention on, but
Strauss is another big character. He's someone else that had been getting experimented on and whose
yeah,
mind is also fracturing. And so kind of throughout the whole game, Isaac is also seeing someone who is just a little further down this experience than he is, that he is inevitably like it is happening to him and it is getting worse. So that's also like a good extra bit of horror. It's just like what he might turn into, and it's like it layers this whole other element of horror on, because the creatures, it's like, well, you play the whole game with them, they're not going to be as scary the second time around. So here's something else, a totally other kind of horror to deal with while he's gotten good at dealing with the other thing.
And then you've also got a little bit more of the pacing amplified by the fact that Tideman is constantly sending his goons after Isaac for the entire game. So there's like this constant sort of thing in the back of your head that like these guys are chasing Isaac down. They're trying to find out where he is and take him out. And it's quite frequent that they end up clashing with the creatures as well. So you get that sort of like multi-factional little war that Isaac is caught in the middle of.
And that plays into the level design too, because in the first game, the remake added like the full blown sort of Resident Evil opening shortcuts, going back and forth between the areas. That wasn't quite there in the original, but it did have a bit more of an open exploration structure to each of its areas, whereas this game is a lot more linear. That's also kind of that Resident Evil 2 to 4 sort of difference. Like there's a lot less like tons and tons of side rooms and they all feed back in and it's all like at one big maze. It's much more of a like go go go. We are moving through these set pieces in these locations, and there's like big set pieces in this, like in like very very cool ones. I mean, just the kind of opening, not opening, but like first big one in like end of chapter 1 or chapter 2 is this like huge like train sequence that is so memorable. And I mean, it's up there with like the Uncharted 2 one. And it just, there's early on, even there's these just big bombastic sort of things, but they all work too. It never goes too far outside of the tone of the original, it stops itself before it ever gets like completely ridiculous. It always feels like this natural kind of plausible extension of what the world already was.
Okay. I mean, you praised a lot of stuff with this game. You praised the action in it. Is a step above being the first game there, it seems like there. Any major issues at all with this game, you think?
I mean, I think Ulysses said one thing is like, going back to it, there are a lot of QuickTime events that maybe could be, if they were to do a remake, you maybe would find a way to have less of that. But I mean, to be honest, there's not too much that sticks out as a negative in it. I mean, it's got all this great gameplay, all these great enemies. I think the story's actually quite good. The voice acting's quite good. It is able to just evolve what it is as a series. The pacing is tight. Yeah, it's almost hard for me to find room to like really dig in and go like, this is something I would change. And even to the point of the replayability too. I mean, there's like unlockable difficulty settings and challenge modes and
Fun
special
novelty
bonus
items.
Yeah. If you could beat like the hardest difficulty, you get a bonus weapon, and there's I don't know. I can't really, and I tried the whole time we've been talking about doing a review for this. I've been like, what's just something bad about this game? And I'm just like, I don't know. I really couldn't find anything that like bothered me.
Yeah, well, the way I looked at this game is up until the remake of 1 came out, Dead Space 2 was like the strictly better game when compared to 1. It is a different tone, so if you prefer pure horror, 1 is probably more your thing. But 2 fixes all of 1's problems and is then just like it's a game that's hard to find fault with in a lot of ways. Like the story is I think better in this one. It was good in 1. It's better in this one. The weapons are a massive improvement in 2. Like there are some weapons in 1 you would just never use because they kind of sucked. At least the remake fixed that. But before we had the remake, 2 was what fixed that. Every weapon in 2 is satisfying to use in some way. The enemies are, you get a little bit more diversity in the enemy roster in 2, and that makes the combat, just as fun and fresh as it was in 1. I struggle to think of anything in 2 that I was like disappointed in.
Mm.
And you mentioned a good thing too with the way like two made all those improvements before the remake actually had the chance to, and that's true in a bunch of ways. The enemy variety, there's a couple more enemy types in the remake, and they're from the second game that they like re-added in. The one thing we haven't mentioned is from the first game to the second game. In the first game, you'd have the zero gravity segments, and you'd be like suctioned to the floor, and then you'd like look up and click a spot, and you'd like do like a
Oh yeah.
very controlled jump, and then you'd be on like another surface, and then you'd walk on that surface. In the second game, they
Free flight.
completely changed that stuff out, and it's like full motion, like being able to fly around, and there's little boosters like jet boosters on the suit, and then all the
You basically get to be Iron Man.
it's kind of a little bit of an Iron Man thing. But then in the remake, of course, they changed all the zero G sections to be what they are in two. But two came up with that design first.
Mm. Okay. This game here, so when it came out there in 2010, it was supplemented by several other multimedia projects, including the novel Dead Space Martyr. Have you read that novel at all?
I actually
Yeah.
have that on my shelf back there. I have read it.
Okay, is it pretty
Yeah.
good? No.
I thought it was decent.
Yeah.
It's not like amazing, but I thought it was, especially as like a piece of lore in a world I was already interested. I was like, this is good, totally good enough to be this kind of tie-in.
They
Yeah, I
had an
remember
animated
reading it back in the
movie
day.
called Dead Space Aftermath.
I have seen the animated movies as well. Those were not as good. Those
Okay.
were okay. There's some cool things in them. There's a lightsaber chainsaw that is never used in the games that I think should be. But yeah, those were all right. They were all right.
Okay. What about you, Ulysses? You saw the animated movie?
I did not see the movie.
Oh, okay. Fake fan, man. You got to see the movie, man. You gotta watch it.
There was
There
another
was,
game that was a spin-off called Dead Space Extraction. They released actually exclusively for the Wii originally, and then it came packaged as like a bonus for the 360 and PS3 versions of Dead Space 2. It was this weird little like made for the Wii like on rails like light gun shooter.
okay. I also see another spin-off game called Dead Space Ignition.
Yeah, that was like a in like the
Action puzzle game.
it was in the early days of like PS3 and 360 having like indie games on their digital storefronts, and it's not very good. It's like take like the kind of annoying at times like hacking mechanic from the original BioShock, make it worse, and then make it the entire game.
Oh, ugh, okay. Gotcha.
Really?
I do
That's
remember
that's
that.
that's what that was.
I do remember that from BioShock. And there was a mobile prequel as well. It was referred to as Dead Space Sabotage.
I've
Yeah.
seen footage of it, but I never played that one.
Yeah, it was on iOS and Android back in 2011. So you had that. It says reviews of the game praise its gameplay and audio and level design, with many calling it superior to the original Dead Space. The game sold 2 million copies during its opening week, but according to latter developer interviews, Electronic Arts was disappointed in its commercial performance. A direct
Uh,
sequel, Dead Space 3, was released in 2013. 2011 had a lot of good games in 2011. This was a pretty good year.
It was a
You
yeah.
great year.
you had The Elder Scrolls, you had Portal 2, you had Batman Arkham Asylum, you had The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D. Let's see, you had Minecraft, you had another Zelda game, A Link to the Future, The Legend of Zelda, Uncharted 3, the Ico and Shadows Collection HD, Little Big Planet 2, Gears of War 3. Yeah, you had some good games out here. You had the Metal Gear Solid HD collection as well. LA
Yeah, I remember
Noire.
that being a huge year.
Yeah, so you had some really good ones out this year.
I think
Okay.
Dead Space 2 is like at the top of that list.
Very awesome. So what would be your final thoughts rating? Sage there for Dead Space 2.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's not much that I would change about this. I'd be interested in seeing like some of that cut content that was just never finished at all if they were to touch it up. But to be honest, you could even just do a remaster of this game and just touch it up a little bit, and it would probably look great. And I mean, it already plays great. So I'd give it a this is cinema. I mean, I really think this is like at the peak of horror video games. Like without a doubt, this is up there with the absolute best of them.
Okay.
Yeah,
Peak
I'd
from
be
you.
right there with Sage.
Okay. Peak. Okay.
Yeah, I would say so because I mean it's a game that just had an amazing atmosphere. I remember at a time when like the Doom franchise was kind of in the gutter. This was like kind of the thing that was most like what Doom could be at its best, and no, it's just a really great fun time. I'd give it a 10 out of 10. The worst thing about this game is that it was saddled with EA.
Yeah.
Mhm. I mean, if you're gonna give it a 10 out of 10, you want to give it a this is cinema here. This is
Yeah,
okay. Well, there you go. Have you ever given a game 10 out of 10 before?
I don't know.
Okay. What about Doom? Yeah.
Doom
Doom
Eternal,
Eternal,
maybe.
that's a 10 out of
Yeah.
10.
Okay. So there you go. You got another one there. All right. So this is cinema from Ulysses and a peek from Sage for Dead Space
Oh
2.
no, this is cinema.
Oh, this is cinema. Okay. So two this is cinemas for Dead Space 2 there. Do you think the worst thing about Dead Space 2 is that it led to Dead Space 3 or
Well, I think it's definitely just like Ulysses said, it's being saddled with EA as the company that let it come out because 2 million sales is excellent for a horror game. Like that is really good for a horror game. But EA thinks, oh, every single thing that we make should be selling in the same sphere as Call of Duty, regardless of genre. Like they're not taking any of that into account. So then Dead Space 3, of course, they're like, well, we need you to make it more action oriented. We need you to put in a multiplayer mode. We need, all this stuff. And then, yeah, the game itself just ends up not being, I mean, I didn't think 2 was like super, super scary, compared to like say the first one as far as like being overtly horror and then action horror. But 3 just goes, it's kind of the Resident Evil 5 effect. Dead Space 3 goes into that. It's like chasing that exact same trend. It's like the EA wanted it to be like a Gears of War game. And that obviously that's just not what it is. You want that, you got to create something that is in that style to begin with.
mm, gotcha. Okay. So there you go. And Dead Space 3, I guess from people is the weakest of the
Oh,
games.
easily,
Easily,
easily.
easily.
And
Okay.
we are probably like nicer to that game than I think most people, and we would still say easily.
Okay. Nice. All right. So that was you guys' review, Rating Infanturity's review on Dead Space